Welcome back to A Plus Parents, everyone. And when you meet families and you get a chance to find out about what's going on in homeschooling and you get that passion for homeschooling, like see it through to the end. That's who my guest is today. Her name is Jami Newman. She lives in Central Florida, and she's got a kind of a unique story about how they got to where they were kind of city dwellers to now more country dwellers. So I'm going to have her share a little bit about with you about that. And she has three children and a Florida Gator husband, because I can see, if you can see the video, you see the swamp in the background. So I caught that right away. So go Gators. And I know everybody else, it's like, no, not Gators, but go Gators anyway. So, so we get rolling. And, with you, you've got three kids. Your daughter, who's your oldest, is an equestrian and a business owner while still in high school. So we're going to talk about that and how that's happening. And as an equestrian, I learned a new word today. So it's called equine. Did I say that right, Jami?
Almost.
Almost.
Equine.
Equine. Okay, equine.
Equine. There
So
you
an
go. There you go.
equine business. So love it. Jami also has a small group that they get together, small nonprofit where they get together and have a co-op in Central Florida. So just super excited to have you here. And we're going to have you kind of talk a little bit about the world of homeschooling. And one of the things that you shared with me before we got going was that, in your world, and I think there's so many moms that are going to agree with this, that, as a homeschool family, we're all learning, we're all growing, we're all developing, right? But when you notice for yourself that you're growing even more than your kids, I just think that is just it's kind of a profound statement, because oftentimes we don't take a step to just notice for ourselves who we were before we started this journey and who we are now. So I just, that you're looking at that, and you look for yourself, and having your young people look, and having your kids be really kind of move into that self-directed learning. That's what it's all about. So it's just really, really great. So first of all, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for making your day work to be here. Super excited to have you.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Well, okay, so let's just kind of get started, because
Sure.
you started with your daughter, where she almost went down that school path, right? So what had you kind of decide homeschooling is the way to go? Where kind of, because now all kids are homeschooled and you're going to keep doing.
Yeah, right. So this was, so she's technically an 11th grader now. So this was her pre-K year, which would have been at 4 years old. We found this great little church, kind of a pre-K school, very quaint. It was a great experience. But I had some friends that I just had been chatting with, and they were ex-teachers, some just friends that I had met in kind of mom groups, and the whole homeschool thing kind of got brought up. And I thought, well, gosh, they kind of crazy that they even said that. But it's just something kept pulling at me every time I took my daughter to school. She wasn't really happy. She was crying, but every 4-year-old does that. So I just kept thinking it's normal, it's normal, it's normal, and it just never felt normal. And I think it was about the Christmas break that I decided to just kind of take that break to reflect on what I wanted to do with my family. And it was at that point I found out that my husband's job was kind of relocating outside of Central Florida. And I found out we were expecting our third child. And so all of these things kind of piled into one. And I thought, we don't know what school district we're going to be in. We don't know where we're going to buy our house. We don't know, how this third child's going to come into play. And so that kind of sealed the deal. We said, we'll just do it for kindergarten. And then boom, here we are 12 years later.
Wow. And no looking back. And when you think about homeschooling, I can't tell you how many people that have come on the show and have been doing this, into like, the 10 to 15 to 20 years, you're kind of getting into that world, right? And they all noticed that they all started out kind of the same way. It looked like they were going to make home look like a classroom and make it
Yeah.
look like school. And then, and then something happened. So how did that happen for you? When did you realize it's like, wait a minute, this is not going to be the typical, like, we're not going to do the classroom thing. And then what does it start to look like for you?
Right. So I will say I'm just learning this as we kind of go through the motions of homeschooling, but I'm noticing that instead of taking the approach to where you're building the school around what you think school should be, once your kids get to a point where you know the way that they work, you know how they learn, what motivates them and what doesn't, I feel like when you can take that approach to what means the most to them, or what gets their their heart's desired. If you can start kind of working towards that and give them a little bit of ownership of, consequences for your actions, checking your own schoolwork, which I find very awesome about your program because you're big on that.
Right.
So you start putting things into their hands. And sometimes that means failing. Sometimes that means that they might not get a good grade, or they might, miss out on a practice, or they're late to a game. But you slowly start introducing the real world to your kids, which is consequences. And eventually I feel like that just kind of, I started noticing that with my daughter. I guess she was about 13 years old. We did kind of the traditional school. We're going to pick a math, we're going to pick an English. But when we moved out into the country and we're able to get horses in her life, that's when I really started seeing the big changes in her. It was, I just made a spreadsheet for a nutrition package on a feed that I want to research. And I found that, the horses need more carbohydrates than protein for certain performances. And I called this feed store to compare prices. And I just started seeing like all these different subjects that were intertwined into this one love that she had. And I think for me, that was just when I kind of took a step back and I was like, wow, I think I might have been doing this wrong for all of these years. So I don't know that it was kind of my aha moment. I think I had always, I really liked child-led learning, but let's face it, not every child is going to find that passion when they're 5.
That's
So
right.
I think it was just a kind of a combo of circumstances and opportunities, and then just me being able to take a step back and notice those things that were happening instead of just stressing myself out so much. Like, you haven't finished your 5th math lesson this week. You need to sit down and finish reading your social studies book. It was just kind of taking that, working on myself, step back, look at what's going on around you, and noticing all of these things that she was learning just through her passion.
Wow. Well, and you got to love that. That is great. And, you look and you go, oh my gosh, I was doing this all wrong. I don't think so at all. I think you were doing everything right. And what you were able to do right led you to the next step, which led you to the next step. And now
Yes.
here's your daughter now discovering horses, and both your boys play traveling baseball. So
Mm.
you're a busy mom, busy family, right? Which is awesome. Now, one thing, we talked about that you were in the city and then you ended up moving outside of the city. And that's really cool because that's when your daughter really got to discover her passion for horses and get into the equestrian world. But that was the COVID time. So how did you, as a family, how did that happen for you that you were like, okay, you know what, we got to get to the next place? And Florida, fortunately, was a fairly COVID friendly state.
It
There were
was.
so many other states that did not have the same experiences. But what kind of led you to the idea of like kind of going from the city out of the city, and then which really opened up the doors for your daughter too?
Yeah. So we had always had that dream that everyone has. I think all homeschoolers eventually want to own chickens, right? We want to have that garden. But it was just one of those things we never could make happen fully. And it was always in the back of our mind. And of course, pricing in Florida is just, it's not where it used to be. So we just kind of tossed around the idea for a little while, and then COVID hit. And we were like everyone else, we were bored. My husband was looking online one day and he said, I think I found a piece of property that we can actually afford. And it was just one of those situations where it was like, if we don't go and do something now, this is probably never going to happen again. And so the market was at a standstill. Nothing was moving. The interest rates were so low. And we kind of just literally took a leap of faith. And it all worked out. And I tell you, that is for sure when we started noticing my daughter really take off with the horse stuff. Because she has ridden since she was about 5 or 6 years old, but just taken lessons. But there was something different about riding her own horse and working for her own horse and training her own horse that really made everything take off. So that was kind of what led us to make that big leap. And it was definitely a leap of faith. And I do not regret it one bit.
Yeah, and hats off. I mean, congratulations. I think that's awesome. When you look, right, and you kind of see where you were and where you got to, and just starting to see your daughter's passion. but then starting to see how that can tie into her homeschooling experience and her learning, really. So, here you've been at this for, the last 10 to 12 years that you've been a homeschool family, and right. How have your views changed as an educator? Because it's interesting because we're home educators, right? And when you look at it, it's like, okay, so I'm a mom, I'm a wife, so you have all these hats that you're wearing, right? But one of the hats that you get to wear is that hat as an educator, and there's the school system, and they have their hat that they wear. But when you look for yourself as what is it for yourself to be an educator? Because, when you first start homeschooling, what most people have is they have what they know, which is from the past, which is, well, this is what it's supposed to look like, so I must do it that way because we don't have anything else to compare it to. But have you just noticed like your views and how they, as an educator, how have they changed over the last several years?
Well, I can honestly say they have done a complete 360 in the last 12 years. I think I started out just like everyone else, school is school. It was kind of just like a separate part of our life. Like now it's school time, now it's family time. Right. And I think through the years, you start to realize that that is not a long-term solution for certain children, specifically all three of mine. I, found out through trial and error. And I think my views have changed so much. And I kind of compare it to teaching a kid to drive when I talk to new homeschoolers, and I'll explain a little bit about that. When you first start putting your kid in the car, they're observing what you're doing. They might be looking out, out at the trees, or asking you, why did you stop at the stop sign? Or, what's that sound that the car is making? They're observing. So that could be kind of like the beginning phases of your homeschool journey. You're learning, they're learning, but mostly they're learning from you. So then insert child gets learner's permit. That's kind of the middle of the road of homeschooling, where you kind of have to say, okay, if this is going to be your education, I'm going to need you to kind of take on some stuff yourself. And so you're having to trust their judgment, and they have to use all those things that they learned from you for all those years, and now they're applying them. You're still there to correct them and coach them, but that's a scary part of our homeschool journey, right? It's kind of dabbling into that independence. And then I feel like once there's that aha moment of like, wow, this is really what homeschooling is, that's when your kid gets their license and they drive off on their own for that first time. And you have to trust that all of those things that led up to that moment are going to come together. And then it gets easier the second time they leave, and the third time they leave, and the fourth time they leave. And then you build up that confidence in yourself and your family and everything that's just come together like that. So that's kind of how I compare my views on education, because I think I started out very stuck in that I'm driving and you watch me and I'm in control of where we go. And eventually I just kind of switched my mindset into the other category of, okay, I guess I'm okay with you taking the reins now. So, and it's awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's
so much more
cool.
Stress-free.
Oh, I love that. And using the car as an example, I think it's great, especially because you get in the car and all eyes are on you.
Oh yeah.
And then there's that shift where you're letting them discover for themselves. So that's awesome. So, when you look at that journey of the driver, becoming a driver, right? In your homeschool life, as a homeschool family and a homeschool mom, do you have a favorite part for you? Like, if you were looking as a homeschool life, like what's your favorite part?
So honestly, this will make me sound really selfish, but my favorite part is what it has done for me as a person. It has taken me and transitioned my life from a me life, or me and my husband life, to our life. And I think a lot of people kind of frown on that and say that, you shouldn't really put, your family as such a unit, you know, the husband and the wife still have to have, of course, that's all still true. But you have this little tiny wedge of time on this big timeline that is your life. And if you carved out that teeny tiny little amount of years that you have with your kids, it's so small. And so I think for me, just the self growth and the mindset that I have in raising children is by far my favorite thing for homeschooling. And it probably does make me sound pretty selfish because it's pretty self-centered, but I am so much of a better person having gone through these last 12 years than I think I've ever been in my life. So it's
Wow,
it's all for my kids.
yeah. It's, you know, it's a, with they say the side effects, right? There's the side effects, and you know, you hear the commercials on TV, and the side effects are always usually terrible, right?
Oh yes.
Near death, right? So the side effects of homeschooling are what? Is that you get to see yourself grow as well, and then see your kids grow as well. So I just, you know, it's like, that's a great side effect to have, right? So, you know, when you look at that, right, and you can look back and you can see these are the things that kind of like have given you access to be who you are, and to like to carve out and know that timeline. When you have that time, it really is on the, you know, on the big timeline. It's so small, right?
It
What are
really
some
is.
of the, you know, if you look at some of the experiences that you've had, you know, that you really look that, you know, you've kind of like, I don't want to say like grown into that mindset, but that mindset was always, it's more that the mindset was there and it was available to you. So you actually could have it be something that becomes a part of you. Right.
Yeah.
There'd
Yeah.
be experiences along the way that led you down that path to really let you, you know, have that mindset and have it expand to the place where it is. So what are some of the experiences that you've seen for yourself that kind of like those notable moments are like, oh yeah, so there was this and this and this, right?
Yeah, gosh. So I will say, in regards to me changing as a person, I will say that I found myself now. Homeschooling is not all roses and flowers. I mean, I think you can agree it is one of the hardest things that you will ever do. And
Absolutely.
I mean, I found myself gripping at my faith some days and trying new things to try to make sure that I kept my sanity. And I always found myself going to podcasts like yours, faith-based podcast, mom support groups. And I just found myself realizing that I was becoming what I wanted my kids to be. I want them to learn for the rest of their life. And I think when I finally started realizing that I had taken on the homeschooling lifestyle myself and wanting to always better myself and always try to seek knowledge, and, you know, any problems that we have, we can always find a solution for them. And so I think just when I finally realized that I had become a lifelong learner myself, it was like, oh my goodness, I think this is what I'm doing with my kids. I hope they see me doing this.
Right.
I hope it makes an impact on them. So yeah, for sure, it was just those little moments when I found myself tucked in the corner with a podcast, or sipping a coffee in my room, you know, reading my Bible or a faith-based book. And I thought, my gosh, I think I'm becoming a homeschooled person, an adult.
Wow. It's so great. Wait, you know, it's you're sharing that, right? And I had this thought. It's like, if you're not growing, how are your kids going to grow? You know, and
Right.
you know, and it's an interesting thing. It's like, you know, because I share this with people often. It's like, you know, our kids want us to have an amazing life.
Yeah.
And because if we're having an amazing life, it gives our kids permission to have an amazing life as well. And so I
Right.
think for us to be able to know that, yeah, we're all in this together, you know, and it's
Yeah.
like, my kids are my biggest teachers. And, you know, and obviously being around education, it keeps me young, you know, because I've had, you know, just young people for years and years and years to just kind of help me learn and help me grow. So that's just really, really awesome. Well, okay. So, you know, there's people that come into homeschooling and they come into it, and we all end up here for different reasons, you know. And you know, for our family, it was the ability to travel and to live different places, and, you know, and have these unique experiences. and even when we first started with this, my son was just struggling. He was in public school. We brought him home. He was in third grade, and it's funny, like your daughter cried, right? So my son cried when we told him we were going to bring him home. And then we said, well, what do you think about, after grade 3, we're like, what do you think about going back to school? And he cried again. He goes, no, I don't want to go back. So, it was really funny. So we we look and see, how all these things, we all end up here and we all are in it together, and, a lot of times you really pointed to something. Sometimes it's hard, sometimes it really, you're there and you're like, am I doing the right thing? And what, oh my gosh. And, and then it's like, and then where do you turn and what do you do? So, when you look, like the advice that you have for families who are in this to win, like they're in this to succeed, and they're in this to succeed for themselves, for their young, for their children, for their children's lives, for, just really for this to turn out. What advice do you have for families when they hit that wall, when they're kind of like, oh, am I really doing the right thing?
Right. In that same category that I just spoke about, I will say letting your kids see you fail and struggle and dig your way back up, that is part of the learning process. That is part of your growth mindset. That is part of what is going to make them into the person that they are. I mean, your relationships are going to sometimes suffer, and you're going to have to learn each other. You're going to have to learn how to manage each other. And I think my biggest advice to someone would be to not put so much emphasis on the academic part and really work on the relationships before the academics. And once the relationships are in a good place, and that doesn't mean it's always going to be, roses. It's going to be an ongoing project, right? With kids and teenagers and toddlers and all that stuff. But once you hone in on that, and your kids and you kind of know what triggers me, when does he need a break, then you can work on the academics. And it's like, if you think about it, your home is the foundation of all this. It's not just a school. It's the place where your kids come back and cry when, they get in trouble doing something, or it's the place where they come home when they say, I got bullied, or it's the place when they come back when they maybe encounter something that you didn't want them to. It's the place where they come back to say, I failed, and I need the support to help me to get back to where I know I am. And you want that foundation to be so healthy and so solid before you worry about getting them into Harvard or Yale. So that for sure would be my biggest advice, would be to make sure that your relationships are the number one priority in all of it. And it doesn't mean perfection. I think that word perfect and perfection should be thrown away if you're going to homeschool, because you have got to have a flexible mindset.
Right. Oh, I love that. You can't have success without failure.
No way.
It's just like, you're never going to know that it's daylight unless you knew what darkness was, right? I mean, it's just kind of one of those funny things. So, like when you look at that, right, and you see like, well, it was, as you were sharing, I was like, I'm thinking about, the teenager in the car and they get a flat tire, and they're on their own. And what do? Right? Well, there's the breakdown, right? That breakdown's there, but we have to have those breakdowns. So, for me, like the perfect world has everything in it. And it has the success, but it has the failure, so that I can actually really understand what success looks like. And sometimes I'm succeeding when I think I'm failing. And it's like to be able to discern between the two and everywhere in between, because it's all there, but it takes something, right? So, when you look at that mindset for you, how did you change your mindset so that going through the years, like you actually knew what success looked like, right? Because sometimes it's like, this is like a win and we don't look at it as a win. It's like, no, this actually was a success. So did you notice things for yourself? Like what did you do, or anything that happened that kind of like let you change your mindset about what it comes to success, about how it looks for you?
Well, having come from my family is very blue collar. And I married into a very white collar family. So I think having those perceptions of success were completely broadened for me. Like I have a very successful family that likes to get their hands dirty, and my husband has a very studious family who is successful. So I think kind of falling in between, like being able to see both sides of what success are, that helped me mold kind of my thoughts on homeschooling. And I think also just from my experience in public education, having left the public education system and not really being really prepared for what I wanted to do next. I think knowing what success is really can help you kind of go in the right direction for what you want to do with your life. And sometimes it just takes discovering what that is. And so I know there have been moments with my kids where certain things have happened. I know, let's just say with my daughter, because I've been homeschooling her the longest, I used to take her to zoo classes because she loved animals. Like, how awesome is that? You're going to go learn at the zoo. And I remember she would leave and I thought, I'm the best homeschool mom. I just took my animal lover to the zoo classes. She's going to be a zoologist. So she would come out with this worksheet and I'd say, so what did you do? And she would say, I filled out this worksheet and I like looked at these bugs and there was nothing there. It was cool. She got to be around animals, but it was just not her. And I think when I started to see her passion with horses and how she grew to be so motivated around them, it was kind of like, wow, her version of success really is just these little tiny things that have to do with her passion. And seeing the way that her face lit up and how proud she was of herself, that really molded what I feel success was. Because to me, that worksheet at the zoo was success. But when I saw what real success was and how it kind of just came through her, was like, oh, wow, maybe that worksheet wasn't much success.
Right. Oh my God, that's awesome. What, tell us about, she's got a business, right? And how old is she now?
She'll be 17 this spring, so she's still 16.
I love it. 16, has a business. She's an equestrian, and I'm going to try to say that word again. Did you? Let's see, equine.
You're so close this time. Equine.
Equine. Okay, I was thinking equine, and I thought I said that the last time. Anyway, so equine. So in an equine business, what is it? Here she is, 16, getting ready to be 17. She's got her own business. It's going great. And she's living in what her passion is all about. So what does she do inside of her business? How does she work in that business?
So when she was about 14 years old, she started volunteering at a local kind of horse rescue. And that's what did it. She was like, I know this is what I want to do. I like being dirty. I like being around these animals. I love riding them, but I really like working with them. So eventually she landed a job as a stable hand, just cleaning up, at a barn locally. And that led into a really good position at actually he's a celebrity and I won't mention his name because that would be a little weird, but she works for a celebrity at his private stable, taking care of his horses. So she's doing that. And then she landed a job with her trainer, kind of training or working at her barn, taking care of her horses. So she's kind of learned from her trainer about running her business. And she's learning at this other private estate. And she kind of just saved up a bunch of money and decided that she wanted to start taking in horses that were, a good price, maybe needed some training, and take them in and train them up and find an equine professional or equestrian that needed a horse for that particular job. So her first project was a little miniature horse that she trained to pull a cart. And so that was her first project. And then she kind of rolled those funds into the second project, which was a horse that she trained for dressage, which is a type of riding. And so now she's actually training a friend's horse, potentially might be buying it. We're not really sure, but it just, these little projects start turning into more opportunity, and people are actually offering her their horses to keep here so she can train them and then make a little profit when they sell their horse. Kind of like wow. Yeah. So it's kind of gone in a bunch of different directions, but it's really opened up her eyes about, earning an income and budgeting herself. And because she pays for a good 50% of her sport, because it's a pretty hefty price tag. So sure. I've never seen a kid so determined. I'll tell you that much.
Wow.
So,
That's also, and she's apprenticing, she's in that apprentice program. She's learning from people, and then she's taking what she's learning, she's applying it for herself. And so, we're going to have to have her come on the podcast, and we'll do a whole thing with her just to kind of hear about what she's up to and how she got into all that as well.
oh my gosh, she would love that. She would
That
love
would
that.
be awesome. Yeah, I'm sure people listening right now go like, bring her on, let's go. Right. But when you think about, so often you ask young people, well, what do you want to do in your life? Well, I want to run a business. Well, what kind of business? And then they either don't know, or the business that they want to run, they just want to run the business without doing the work to get there. But your daughter's doing that. She's giving herself the opportunities. And what makes that possible? Homeschooling.
Yes.
She has it built into her day that this is her life, and she can grow inside of it. So it's just, it's great. You look at like what success looks like. That's success.
Yeah.
You've got a 16-year-old, almost 17, living her dream, kind of discovering her passion, and then being able to see that, wow, I could, what would it be like if you wake up in the morning and you're like, wow, I'm doing what I love to do, and I do that every day, and I'm getting paid for that?
Right.
It's, I think that's what people are, what they're really, they're really interested in that, and they want to see what that looks like. So that's awesome. Well, that's so cool. Okay, well, we definitely have to have her come on. Of course, once she's on, I know there's two brothers playing baseball that are going to want to come on and talk about baseball. So
Oh boy.
we'll work that out as well. So really great. Jami, tell us a little bit about your co-op. And so, what's going on, because oftentimes, people they're thinking about, I'd like to do something like that, because you've kept it small, and I think you've done that on purpose, to build a community. So just share a little bit about that, because people may be thinking about, I'd like to do something like that as well.
Sure. A really close friend of mine, actually a girl who I went to high school with, ironically enough, her and I, we've always kind of been connected through the homeschooling thing. And, we would meet for field trips. And at one point we would do a weekly nature group. And it kind of got to a point where it was like, well, the kids have kind of outgrown going to the park every week. Really, we need something indoors. We need a facility. And a local church has been so good to us and basically has loaned us some space. And we kind of started out a little informal. It was about 6 families we started with. And then as the church kind of started seeing what we were doing, they allowed us use of more space. So then we kind of word of mouth adopted a few more families, and it's great. And how we run it is basically at the end of every year, we do 2 semesters. So 12 weeks and then a big break, and then 12 weeks. We take the parents and we give them kind of a survey. What did you like about this year? What would you like to change? What subjects are you seeking out for the following school year? And we kind of just merge everyone's opinions and try to come up with a compromise for what to offer the following year. So it's never the same. One year we're doing an art show, the next year we're doing science labs. But it's cool. It keeps it fresh. The kids, the kids enjoy themselves. It gives us time to get together as moms, which is very important. You got to have your people. So that's kind of how it's worked. And we finally filed a nonprofit for, I guess it was about 2 years ago. So we've been officially operating, but we don't plan to grow much past, I'll say maybe 12 families, because we do like to know what's going on in everyone's lives, what all the kids are up to, and we just like to keep the same people around all the time. So we'll be growing, but maybe awesome. Not by much.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. It's great. And you're doing the same thing, and you're modeling what it looks like to get something, kind of like start out, see how it's working, look and see how you want it to grow, and then that you're maintaining it, you're managing it in a way that makes a difference for the families that you support. So I just think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, very cool. Well, if it's okay with you, obviously your daughter's going to be here. We'll probably have your sons come on, but I'd love to have you come back again and talk more about things that you're up to and what you're seeing, in your own homeschool experience and working with the families, and more about your homeschool co-op as well. So that would be awesome.
Sure.
Yeah. So it's great. Well, Jami, thank you again. Thanks for taking time to be here today and taking time out of your busy schedule, and just sharing with us really authentically about who you are, what you've had, your experiences, and really about seeing your kids grow up inside of this amazing world we call homeschooling. So just, thank you for being a homeschool family, because it does make a difference in the world.
Awesome. Thanks. It was so much fun.
Great. Well, everybody, thanks for tuning in to A Plus Parents, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.